Hi there, I'm Azara Tagaya and welcome to another episode of Ringgit Cents Plus, where we talk about personal finance. Now, in the last general election, complaints about the rising cost of living was one of the main issues raised. The new Pakatan Harapan government came to power with the promise of lowering it for the rakyat. It is now almost a year since Pakatan Harapan has taken over Putrajaya, but there are still complaints from Malaysians about how things are getting more expensive. Now, while the government focuses on helping the lower income B40 group, the middle class M40 group are pinched in by having to pay income tax while also faced with the possibility of having subsidies removed in the future. Subsidies they are currently enjoying now, like RON 95 fuel. Now, we met with the Minister of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs, Dato Saifuddin Nasution Ismail, to ask him about the government's plans to reduce the cost of living in Malaysia. Will they be able to do it fast enough to fulfill everyone's needs? To understand the cost of living, first we have to understand what is the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. It measures a basket of goods and services that everyone uses: food, transportation, housing, and so on. This is how the government measures the cost of living in Malaysia. The one with the biggest impact for everyone is food, which is why the Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs is doing a supply chain analysis to understand why food is expensive.
To me, it's quite shocking, to understand at what level actually they push up the price. Take for example the fishermen. They first sell the fish to wholesalers, for example, at 6 ringgit. When the fish arrive at Putrajaya market, we buy it at 22 ringgit. So you can see the huge margin there, and then how many layers involved, and at what stage actually push the price up. There are at least 6 clusters. Number one is food. Unfortunately, food itself contributes to up to 30% of weightage on Consumer Price Index. The others are housing and utilities, another 20%. Okay, and next is cost of transport. This segment contribute at least 18%. So you take food, housing and utilities plus transport. That constitute about 70% of the issue of cost of living. Others are education and health, which I think was heavily subsidized by the government. But food itself is 30%. That's why you can see that people are very sensitive and critical on the issue of price control.
A National Cost of Living Council, or NACOL, has also been set up to help lower the cost of living. One of the suggestions from the council is to find out what consumers are buying at markets.
The idea came out when Bank Negara proposed in the NACOL meeting that Cabinet DCP has to identify what are the top items of consumers. That means when they go to supermarkets or wet markets, what are those items that they have to buy or they buy, Like they push a trolley in the hypermarkets, they put on, for example, flour, cooking oil, diapers, Maggi, could be Milo or whatever, So if you can identify these 20, 30 top items which consumer must buy when they go for shopping, if you can do some supply chain analysis which involve those items, it will be useful for the government to eventually, number one, whether or not we should put it as control items. And it can be done under Akta Kawalan Harga and Pencatutan 2011. Or if there is the issue of supply, for example, and control by only 1 or 2 segments, which impact it also involve a cartel when it comes to price fixing, for example. So to understand that, we have to first do some supply chain analysis, which eventually we can put up a proposal to government in the form of cabinet paper or whatnot, to make a decision on that.
Dato Saifuddin hopes to complete the supply chain analysis by the third quarter of this year, where they would then make a recommendation to the government on things such as breaking up monopolies and even the possibility of licensing wholesalers. For now, there are temporary measures that the government has rolled out to lower the cost of living, like the National Food Bank program to help university students. There are also currently 386 consumer economic shop initiatives, or I-Keep stores nationwide, which sells 195 popular items at lower prices. Unlike the previous Kedai Rakyat Satu Malaysia stores, the government now works with established retailers to operate these stores.
We just get them involved, tell them that can you put 195 popular items which consumer must buy whenever they go for shopping, to buy groceries. So other than that, they can sell whatever, how many numbers of stock keeping units they can put it in their shop, But please provide some space for this 195, and then I can assure them that they will get enough supply if there is a need to get the supply of cooking oil, flour, sugar, and all that, And they're very happy. They're very happy. That's explained why after 4 months of our launching, the demands, the request to put up the I-Keep shops is very good,
By the end of the year, the government expects the number of stores to increase to 400. We also asked the minister, will subsidies, such as petrol, be phased out, or will there be targeted subsidies? Dato Saifuddin says that Malaysians currently enjoy subsidies for 5 consumer items: RON 95 fuel, diesel Euro 2, LPG gas, 1 kilogram polybag palm cooking oil, and general-purpose wheat flour. In Sabah and Sarawak, there are also transportation subsidies to ensure that the prices of essential goods are the same in Peninsular Malaysia. The government spends billions subsidizing these items and will be moving towards targeted subsidies, which only the lower-income B40 group will enjoy. As it is, many of the subsidies enjoyed by the lower M40 group will eventually be removed. So we wanted to know, what does the ministry have planned?
I do agree. At the moment, the focus is more on B40. And there is a need to also look into the M40 segment, especially the lower bracket. The idea is, by doing this targeted subsidy, for example, obviously we're going to save a lot of money on the part of the government, so that we could extend to the M40, especially the lower bracket, as I mentioned, But before we do that, we have to actually make sure that the targeted subsidy program, which we intend to start with RON 95 first, after that we could expand it to flour, LPG gas or cooking oil, and then at the end of the day, there is some saving to that, so that we could use that for the M40. That is the real intention of doing the targeted subsidy.
Controlling the cost of living is a pretty daunting task for the government to handle, and it involves multiple ministries and parties. It's going to take some time before the government finishes its study and rolls out its long-term measures. For now, we recommend consumers to do a monthly budget and have the discipline to stick to it.